Wait, so today we're going to do a deep dive.
Okay.
And it's going to be pretty fascinating, I think.
Look at it.
Because we're diving straight into the early years of Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yeah.
And I think we have some pretty cool source material here.
Some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, excerpts from biographies that really focus on like his pre-fame years.
Right before he was, Napoleon.
Exactly. Like everyone knows Napoleon the Emperor,
Yeah.
the conqueror, the guy on the horse with the hat.
Right, the whole bit.
Right, the whole bit. But like, what about Napoleon the Corsican? Like, that's what I'm really curious about. How did this, island boy rise to become one of history's most influential figures?
It's a great question to ask, and that's what we're here to uncover today.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Let's do it.
So I guess like starting point, got to start at the beginning.
Their origin story, right?
Yeah. Like where and when was this guy even born?
So Napoleon, she was born in Ajaccio, Corsica.
Ajaccio.
Yeah, in 1769. And this is important because Corsica at this point, like just a few years before,
Right.
it had just been acquired by France from the Genoese.
From the Genoese.
And let me tell you, the Corsicans were not exactly thrilled about being handed over.
Right. I mean, being just like, passed around, like that can't feel
Right?
good.
Not at all. And especially because they were fiercely independent,
Okay.
proud of their distinct culture,
Mhm.
and they had this long history of resisting outsiders.
Right.
Like anyone coming in to try and, take over.
Yeah, like that's not going to work for us.
Exactly.
So basically, Napoleon is born into like this climate of resistance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about being born into conflict.
I mean, that's got to shape a person, right?
Oh, absolutely. And even more so when you think about his family.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Bonaparte family dynamic.
Well, so his father, Carlo Bonaparte,
Good.
he initially sided with the Corsican nationalists who were like pushing back against French rule.
Wow. So like even within his own family.
Right. Within his own home, there's this conflict.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting.
Imagine the dinner table conversations.
Oh my gosh. I can't even.
Right. But here's the thing, though.
Okay.
Carlo, he was ever the pragmatist.
Okay.
He eventually switched sides and joined the French administration.
So he just like flipped.
Yeah. I mean, it was a shrewd move. He secured him a position.
Okay.
He was climbing the ladder.
Making those connections.
Exactly. And it opened up opportunities for his kids.
I was going to ask about that because you don't send your kid to, enemy school.
Exactly.
So like what kind of opportunities came up for Napoleon because of this?
Yeah.
I mean, other than the obvious, siding with the French.
Well, so here's the thing.
Okay.
9-year-old Napoleon.
9.
Yeah, 9 years old, gets sent off to military school
What?
in mainland France.
Oh my gosh. That is so young.
It's so young, right?
Yeah.
Like imagine just being plucked from this island,
Yeah.
speaking with a Corsican accent.
Right. And dropped right into the heart of French aristocracy. It's got to be like stepping onto a different planet.
It's like a whole other world, isn't it?
Right. It was a total culture clash.
Totally. And I'm guessing, being the outsider maybe didn't make things easy.
Right. But here's the thing. Even though he was this outsider, he actually thrived academically.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
He particularly excelled in math, history, and geography.
Interesting.
Yeah. And this is something that's highlighted a lot in sources we looked at.
Yeah.
Like, they all talk about his teachers, even back then, recognizing his strategic mind,
Yeah.
even as a teenager.
So it wasn't just like rote learning, right? It was like he actually understood these things.
Yeah, it was like he was applying it already. Like his grasp of geometry, for instance, wasn't just some academic skill. It foreshadowed his military genius.
Wow. That's incredible.
All right.
So like, are you saying that, years later when he's winning these huge battles,
Oh, yeah.
that's like that same geometric precision, but applied to battlefields?
Absolutely. Like his flanking maneuvers, the one that won him the Battle of Austerlitz,
Yeah.
that's geometric precision right there.
That's amazing.
It's incredible, right? Like all these little details.
Yeah. It makes you realize how much,
Mhm.
these early influences can really shape a person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of shaping influences,
Yeah.
Napoleon's life took kind of a tragic turn in 1785
Oh, yeah.
when his father passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that just like really stuck out to me in the excerpts because he was only 16 at the time.
Imagine that.
So young.
16 years old. And suddenly he's thrust into this role of head of the family,
Right.
responsible for his mother
Yeah.
and his siblings.
Yeah.
And he's even commissioned as lieutenant while he's still grieving.
Wow.
Like, can you imagine?
Yeah, that's a heavy burden for anyone to carry, let alone like a teenager, you know?
Absolutely. And you start to think about how that kind of loss and that sudden responsibility might have forged a sense of duty in him
Yeah.
and this resilience that we see later on.
Right, like talk about a trial by fire.
Yeah.
And then just a few years later, the world explodes, right?
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
1789, the French Revolution is in full swing.
Things are changing.
Everything's changed. Like, what an incredible, tumultuous time to, like, come of age, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the excerpts mentioned Napoleon's kind of conflicted loyalties during this period, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you've got, on the one hand, these ideals of the revolution, you know, liberty, equality, fraternity,
right?
Ideas that obviously resonated with him, right?
Oh, yeah.
But he's also a Corsican, right? With these deep ties to his homeland.
Right.
And his own struggle for independence. So how did he navigate those two, you know, like kind of conflicting forces?
It was a very complex dance.
I bet.
And then to make things even more interesting into this already volatile mix, enters Pasquale Paoli.
Pasquale Paoli.
The returning Corsican nationalist hero.
Okay. I'm guessing this is going to complicate things.
Oh, yeah.
So what happens with Paoli?
So Napoleon initially supports him, right?
Yeah.
But then there's this dramatic break.
They have a falling out.
And this is a big deal.
Okay, why? What happens?
Well, so Paoli's return and his staunch anti-French stance, it basically forces Napoleon to make a choice.
Okay.
So he has to choose between Corsica and France.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. And I think Napoleon realizing that aligning himself with Paoli would limit his future.
Right.
He makes this pivotal decision in 1793. He and his family flee Corsica.
Wow.
They sever ties with their homeland.
So he turns his back on Paoli and on Corsica.
Yeah, essentially he does.
Wow.
It's this brutal severing of ties, but you kind of see how he's, you know, willing to make these tough choices.
Right. It's like ambition over, you know, like, pride has his homeland.
Absolutely. And I think that's a theme that we see throughout his life.
Right. And so it makes me wonder, like, this ambition that we're seeing, like, was it always there? Or was it, like, ignited by, you know, the chaos of the French Revolution?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right.
It really is. But I think what we can see really clearly from these early years is that Napoleon's Corsican origins, far from being just like a footnote, were absolutely fundamental to his development.
Yeah.
You know, the ambition, the resilience, the ability to navigate complex loyalties, and maybe even that strategic genius. It was all forged in those early years on the island.
It really is incredible, right? Like, to think about how much, you know, even the greatest figures in history are shaped by the circumstances they were born into.
Absolutely.
Makes you wonder, like, what if he hadn't, you know, been born in Corsica? What if he hadn't had that experience? Would he have become Napoleon?
Would he have been Napoleon without that unique, tumultuous Corsican upbringing? It's a question we're thinking about.
Definitely something to ponder. All right. Well, that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for listening, and make sure to join us next time as we uncover more fascinating stories from history.
See ya.
Bye.